Hey everyone, how are you? Just I'm looking at the time here. It's probably you've just had your lunch, maybe not quite at that mid-afternoon coffee slump as yet, depending on when you start your day and how you're tracking and where you're up to. But I thought in our conversation for this month, in and around motivation, for those of you who don't know who we are, my name's Michelle Crawford and we run a business called Being More Human. And our business is all about supporting individuals and teams and organisations to really transform through different mindsets so that they can get closer toward reaching their human potential. Because, of course, human potential is a theory. It's not an actuality. I don't think there's a person on the planet who's ever genuinely reached their full potential. That's why we're so interested in it as a concept. But each month we have a different theme that we're talking about, and for our June we are talking about motivation. And for those of you that follow us, you will have already seen a blog that Sam Suialo has written about motivation, and if you haven't seen it, go and seek it out, because it's a beautiful story which is a combination of motivational theories but also stories about his own life and his ponderings about whether or not he's having a midlife crisis. So it's a great read, so go and seek that one out. But for today, what I wanted to talk about with motivation, I've just got a couple of notes that I've written here because I don't want to miss out on a few different key points that I wanted to chat about. Motivation, I think, is fascinating because there's so much written about it, and so many people have all these different theories about how you can actually go and feel more motivated. And if you chat to someone or just think about your own life for a second, and I know for me in my world, if I'm let's just take my personal training that I do in the mornings during the week as an example. Now, if I left me showing up to that personal training as something that I felt like doing, I promise you I would never go. I wouldn't actually go anytime during the week. And the interesting thing to me about that is that I know that once I make a decision and I create the action, then I feel the motivation. So I think one of the interesting things to observe about motivation is it's not the thing that happens first. You don't suddenly get out of bed in the morning and feel so motivated to go and run a marathon that you start training. It's usually you just make a decision to start running, and you start running, and then through that momentum and through that action and that focus on actually doing something in the direction that you want to go in, that's what creates the motivation. And it's interesting to me because there's a lot of people who say different things about their world and their life and what they want and what they want their lives to be like. And yet they're sitting on the couch waiting until they feel like it. And I'm just wondering, like with you, what is there anything that is in your world that you're sitting on the couch, either literally or proverbially, and thinking the world might just plonk it in your lap one day? You know, you don't have the job that you want, and you're just hoping that someone somewhere realizes that and comes to make you the most amazing job offer ever, and yet you're sitting on the couch and you're thinking that might just fall into your lap, quite literally. My experience, that's not usually the way that things work. The way that things seem to work is that the universe responds to action, and it responds to your intent and your focus on your desire to want something in your world to change. And it's an extreme thing to say, but I actually don't think that it matters. At least in the start, it doesn't matter what action it is that you're taking, as long as the action is somehow headed in the direction. So let's take the idea of fitness. If you decide that you want to get fit, you can literally either sit on the couch and, wait till you see some kind of fitness special for personal training, or you can decide to take action. Now, that action could be something as little as jumping on Google and finding out your local gyms or your local personal trainers and then making a phone call to actually talk to some of them. The minute that you take that action, no matter what the action is, the minute that you take it, you are communicating your intent and your desire to create change in your world in and around your fitness. And what starts happening is not only does the universe pay attention to that, but your own personal circumstances start to become shaped by that. And I'll explain what I mean. So for me, I've got an old blog that I've written, and it's called The Reluctant Runner. And it's about me, because for those of you who know me, you might know that I run, but you might know that I run reluctantly, or at least in the past I have been running reluctantly. And it's interesting for me because I've made a decision that I want to run because it makes sense in a range of different ways in my life. It's very flexible. I can do it wherever I am. I don't have to wait to go to a particular site. I don't have to necessarily wait for other people. It's free. I can determine if it's going to take 15 minutes, half an hour, an hour. So there's so much flexibility around running, which is why I decided that I would like to run. And yet it's not something I enjoyed doing particularly. And so I had to be quite creative about the way that I chose to motivate myself to actually get off the couch and go for a run. And it took a lot of nudging and coaxing by someone who I was working with at the time. But she kept saying to me, you need to trick your brain. And I said, what do you mean you need to trick your brain? And she said, well, what do you love even more than running? And I said, well, I love learning. I'm passionate about learning. I would jump out of bed at 6 a.m. in the morning to learn something new. And she said, well, why not choose your favorite podcast and then put that on whilst you're running and see if that has any kind of influence on your running. So that's what I decided to do. After her telling me this for quite a long time, I decided that I'd give it a go. And so now for me, I've connected, and I've done this because I knew I needed to trick my brain, because I wanted to run for all the good reasons that I wanted to, but I needed to be able to motivate myself toward doing that regularly. And so with the podcast, I literally just choose the most kind of interesting or fun sort of podcast that I want to listen to, and then I go out there and I run. And instead of running for, say, 30 minutes, I might run for 45 minutes or for an hour. And it's massively changed my relationship to running. And I learn a lot about myself and the way that I'm motivated from that particular example. So you're not always going to be motivated toward the things that you want to do. So you have to understand how your particular brain works and how your levels of motivation work. But as I said, for those of you who have just jumped on, at the start we were talking about this idea of, do I feel like it? Now, very, very often, you're not going to feel like it. And if you wait until you feel like it, you'll be waiting a very long time and then you'll die. So if you are thinking of the idea of achieving a big goal or even a small sort of goal, you can't wait till you feel like it, because it's very rare that you will. What you have to be able to do is say, I know that I'm going to go out there, I'm going to take some action, I'm going to go for a walk or my first run, and that's what makes me feel like it. So one of the tricks today in and around motivation is that momentum creates motivation. And it doesn't matter what kind of momentum, provided it's action, ideally aligned action, it will create momentum for you. And you'll know yourself, once you start doing some kind of exercise or once you start eating more healthfully, it becomes much easier and much easier because you feel like you're internally on this upward spiral. And it shifts the way that you view everything in your world. So the take-homes from today, from our topic about motivation and momentum, are really, the first one is that momentum creates motivation, and the second one is you'll never feel like it, so just do it anyway. So I'd love you to have a think about something in your life that you want to motivate yourself to do, and think about a little bit of a human hack that you can put in place in your own world to trick yourself so you learn to love whatever the thing is that you want to do and want to move towards. For those of you who don't know who we are, my name's Michelle Crawford and we're from A Business Being More Human. And we love to work with individuals, teams and organisations to really support people to move toward their human potential. And the challenging but exciting thing about doing that for other people is that we set a standard for ourselves in terms of wanting to be the best versions of ourselves that we can be. And motivation is a massive part of that, a massive element toward the idea of being the best version of ourselves. So I hope you're going to have a fantastic afternoon and think about whatever it is that you would like to shift and change. We're going to put a link in the bottom of this particular live stream, and the link is to our online program called 7 Habits of Hope. And it's a whole online strategy, including a workbook and a group that you can be part of that can support you in changing very specific habits that you would like to change toward being the best version of you. So I hope you have a fantastic afternoon and enjoy the 7 Habits of Hope. Take care. Cheers.